In 1996, a man while jogging finds an old-style board game buried in the sand on the beach. He brings it home and gives it to his teenage son Alex. Alex couldn't look less impressed, but that's because it's a board game and nobody plays board games anymore. He ditches the game and jumps on his video game console instead. That night as Alex sleeps, something strange happens in his room and he is awoken by a green flashing light and the sound of drums. The sound leads him to the board game which has now transformed into a video game. Curious, Alex puts the game into his console and we cut out of the house to see a blinding flash of green light coming from the room. 20 years later, Spencer plays video games alone in his room. He is clearly pretty involved in the game, finishing it easily, but then his mom calls out and Spencer hurries to his computer as if he was working the whole time. She sticks her head in just as he sits down and tells him that she is late for work. She also reminds him that the world is a scary place and Spencer seems to agree. Across town, a star athlete Fridge gets ready for school. He tells his mom that he's meeting up with Spencer first, who has been tutoring him to help with his grades. She seems surprised that he and Spencer still hang out, but is more concerned with his grades, suggesting that they're so bad that he might even be kicked off the football team. He assures her that it's all fine. Meanwhile, Bethany seems to live the perfect fake life before getting ready for school. She takes her time getting the perfect Instagram photo, a candid moment that took her far too long to prepare. Spencer and Fridge meet up outside an abandoned house. They call it the Freak House. Fridge notes Spencer's raincoat even though it's not raining. Suddenly Spencer freaks out when he sees a squirrel. Fridge looks a little disturbed by Spencer and just wants to get their meeting over with. Apparently, Spencer wrote an essay for him which is guaranteed A. Fridge is grateful, but when Spencer has to hang outside of school, Fridge turns him down with an obvious lie. They used to be best friends but not anymore. Before Spencer can leave, the owner of the freak house comes outside and offers Spencer a serious warning about the harsh realities of the world. He has clearly lost his mind. Bethany is in class and is supposed to be taking a test, but she's on her phone, more concerned about a boy not liking her photo than the exam. Oblivious to the fact that she's distracting the others in the class, her teacher gives her detention. It's gym class and Martha doesn't want to join in. She clearly is a bit of a loner, but when the gym teacher tries to bring her out of her shell, Martha ends up insulting the gym teacher and her entire profession. Martha also gets detention. Hey, movie story recaps here. We've got a small challenge that'll take 5 seconds and it will bring 10 years of good luck to you. Ready? Like and subscribe to the channel if you are enjoying the video. Hit that notification bell and become a part of the cool squad. He and Fridge are called into the principal's office. Turns out that the paper Spencer wrote for Fridge was one that he used before and his teacher noticed. Spencer tries to cover for them both, but in the end, the two not-so-close friends are given detention. Fridge is furious with Spencer, but Spencer is angry that Fridge doesn't appreciate him enough. Detention gets off to a bad start. Their teacher lectures them on personality, claiming that they should use this moment to realize who they are and who they want to be. They get one life and so, they best decide how to spend it, and today they're gonna spend it in detention. They are assigned monotonous tasks like pulling the staples out of 1,000 magazines with a warning that they all have to be back tomorrow if they don't do it today. This annoys them all except for Spencer. They get to work and Martha seems like the only one who seems to care. Bethany sits back and plays on her phone while Fridge and Spencer explore the piles of junk in the room. Together they find an old video game and plug it into the TV. The game is Jumanji and there's a strange quality about the game, but something doesn't seem quite right. Fridge and Spencer both pick characters with Spencer, claiming that it won't matter who they pick. Bethany then picks up a controller because she'd rather do that than to staple magazines. Eventually they convince Martha to join them too, although she does so very reluctantly. They start the game and that's when things get weird. Loud drums start to beat throughout the room, the console starts to spark and turn green. Spencer unplugs the game, but the console goes crazy and Spencer gets sucked into the game. Everyone screams only for each of them to share the same fate. Moments later Dr. Bravestone, who is a hulking mass of handsome muscle, lands in the middle of a lush desert. A second later he's joined by a rather short Franklin mouse. A third person then appears, an athletically dressed woman named Ruby, and finally there's a fourth member of their group, an overweight science type named Professor Sheldon. It doesn't take long for these 4 random people to realize who they are, the kids from detention. Spencer is the first to figure it out, and now in the body of Dr. Bravestone, he explains that the 4 of them are in the game, and that the bodies they have taken are the avatars that they had picked. Earlier, Fridge is the mouse and Martha is Ruby Roundhouse, while Bethany is the fat scientist Professor Sheldon. They all take a moment to figure out what is what, as calmly as 4 teenagers would be able to. Bethany thinks that they must be in a coma while Spencer and the others don't agree, but as Bethany tries to argue the point, a hippopotamus sneaks up behind her and crushes her in its humongous jaws, killing her. Professor Sheldon then falls from the sky in one piece, seemingly perfect and all right. It's now that they start to realize that this maybe is real, although they don't know what real means anymore. Before they have a chance to figure anything else out, the hippopotamus returns and it looks very angry. It chases them, and the four characters flee for their lives, only for a sudden jeep to appear. They hustle into the jeep, which is driven by Nigel, who seems to know who they all are. He speaks to them as if they are the characters they inhabit, explaining that it's good to see them, and that they're just in time, and most importantly that Jumanji needs their help. He tells them that the place is cursed, and they are relying on the four of them to lift the curse before it's too late. They try to ask him more questions, but his answers appear pre-written, and the way he speaks is almost scripted. Spencer realizes that he's an NPC, a non-playable character who can only answer certain questions. Eventually, Nigel explains what's going on and why they're there via flashback. Professor Russell Van Pelt is Dr. Bravestone's old partner who became obsessed with finding the sacred jewel of Jumanji. When he finally did find it, prying it free from its resting place at the top of a jaguar statue. A dark power consumed Van Pelt and gave him dominion over all of Jumanji's creatures. A terrible curse then befell the land, and Nigel was able to steal the jewel from Van Pelt, but now, it's up to the four players to return the jewel back to its resting place and lift the curse once and for all. Before Nigel sends them on their way, he gives them one final piece of advice: return the jewel and lift the curse if you wish to leave the game. You must save Jumanji and call out its name. He then kicks them out of the jeep, much to each character's confusion. On their own now, the four characters try and decide what to do. First they have to come to grips with who they are. Spencer is a coward in the body of a hero. Fridge is an athlete and in the body of a tiny man. Martha is a shy nerd in the body of a scantily dressed strong independent woman, and Bethany is a self-obsessed poser in the body of an overweight unattractive man. It's going to be a struggle for them all, but Spencer is somewhat confident. He plays video games, he knows what to do, so he rallies them together. Bethany starts to read the map, helping them find their way, but before they can do so, they hear a noise in the distance. It is revealed to be dozens of men on motorbikes with guns chasing them. They all run as fast as they can with rockets flying after them and exploding, and bullets hail down from all directions. Spencer runs fast, really fast, while Martha jumping through the trees with ease, and even Bethany manages to get away, but unfortunately Fridge can barely run with his short legs, and Spencer has to carry him. They somehow manage to breach the forest where they come upon a cliff that leads down to a river. With no choice, all four jump for their lives. On the bank of the river, Martha reveals that she was shot. She dies instantly but then reappears. It's now that they realize that they each have 3 lives only, which means that Martha and Bethany have now lost a life each. If they lose all their lives, game over and they all die in real life as well. Meanwhile, Van Pelt learns that they got away from him, and he sends more characters to go and find them. As the characters head for the bazaar, Bethany and Martha start to bond, but Spencer and Fridge fight. Fridge blames Spencer for their situation, and Spencer blames Fridge for thinking he's too cool to be his friend. They argue and Fridge pushes Spencer off a cliff, killing him. Spencer then points out that they can't fight, they need each other if they want to get through this. They reach the bazaar with a single clue to find the missing piece of the map. It leads them to a single room with a viper lurking inside a basket. The location of their missing piece. Working together, they coax the viper out of the basket and manage to retrieve the piece they were after. Unfortunately, the piece of their map is just a statue of an elephant and another riddle. Before they get a chance to figure it out, they become surrounded by Van Pelt's men. They try and fight their way out and almost succeed, but soon become overwhelmed. It looks like this might be the end when a smoke bomb suddenly floods the area and a random cloaked individual leads the fort of safety through the sewers. Beneath the bazaar, their savior is another character named Jefferson Seaplane. As he leads them to safety, he explains that he's also stuck in the game like them. He takes them to a secret hideout and makes them drinks and tells them that he's been there for a while, but doesn't know how long, possibly a couple of months. Unfortunately, he's been stuck on the same level for a while. He has died twice and is too scared to try again. It's then that Bethany has a realization he was the piece that they needed to find. With him, all of them might actually stand a chance at finishing this game. The next level is a hangar bay, guarded by 2 men with big guns. They need to get past the guards in order to reach the helicopter inside. As a means to do so, they send Martha in to distract them. First, Bethany gives Martha tips on how to use feminine powers to seduce the guards, but it seems like a pretty terrible idea. They have no choice, and as they watch Martha approach the guards, Seaplane drops some lingo that suggests that he's not from the same era as the rest of them. They learn that he's in fact Alex Vreek, the teenager from the start of the movie who disappeared 20 years ago. Spencer reveals to Fridge that he has a crush on Martha. Fridge tries to convince him to make a move, but Spencer, the coward, refuses down. By the hangar bay, Martha tries to seduce the two guards but fails miserably, then almost in an instinct she starts to fight them. One of her strengths is dance fighting, and with the aid of Baby I Love Your Way playing on the radio, she kicks the guard's ass, and they manage to get to the helicopter. In order to avoid their pursuers, they're forced to fly through a deep canyon that harbors a stampede of angry rhinos. The rhinos chase the helicopter, knocking it about. Fridge accidentally drops the jewel, and they have no choice but to go back for it. As a means to collect the jewel from among the rhinos, Spencer throws Fridge out of the helicopter to distract them. He gets run down, Spencer manages to grab the jewel before the rhinos see him, and when Fridge reappears in the middle of the sky. Having just died, Spencer catches him before he crashes back to the ground somehow. They all manage to make it through the level, and with the jewel still in hand. On the other side of the canyon, Alex is ecstatic, but a mosquito suddenly bites him, which is one of his weaknesses. In an act of true bravery and selflessness, Bethany gives one of her lives to save him a moment of peace. As everyone collects themselves, Bethany and Alex connect, while Spencer admits his feelings to Martha, and the two share a very awkward first kiss. That night, they reach their final destination, the statue of the jaguar, where the sacred jewel must be returned. They come across a path that seems to lead right to it, and Spencer decides to climb through the trees as a means to skip over the path, but while up high, he spots a squirrel and freaks out, falls from the tree, and then dies. They need to find another way, and the only way they're getting through this is together. Fridge, the football star, devises a strategy. Fridge, Bethany, and Alex distract Van Pelt and his men, while Spencer and Bethany try and get the stone to the statue, but then Van Pelt gets a hold of Bethany, putting a knife to her throat and demanding the stone. Fridge however uses his zoology skills to call an elephant to aid them. This gets Van Pelt distracted and Bethany escapes, but that's only the beginning. Spencer's on a motorbike, and he starts up the mountain to where the jewel needs to be placed, and Bethany, holding the jewel, finds herself in a pit of cobras, but thinking quickly, she allows herself to get bitten, sees vanishes into thin air and appear into the sky, and as she falls back to the ground, she hands the jewel off to Spencer, who grabs it mid-air and lands on top of the statue with the jewel in hand. He shoves it back into the resting place and cries out the name of the game, Jumanji. The effect is instantaneous, and soon Jumanji seems to return to its former more peaceful self. The five characters now stand about, unable to believe that they did it and together as a team. Nigel turns up in his jeep and congratulates them, promising to return them home. They all accept eagerly, except for Spencer, who's scared to return to his old self, but he does so with a little convincing from Bethany. Back in the real world, the four friends can't believe they're back, although they soon realize that Alex isn't there with him. They hurry to the freak house, seeing that it now looks normal and lived in. What's more interesting is that Alex is there, but now as an adult. It turns out that he was sent back to the same night he first played the game, and he's been waiting on them to return. They all laugh, unable to believe that they did it. The adventure had an impact on all of them. Not only are they friends, but it's more than that. Spencer isn't the same coward he was. Fridge cares about more than sports. Martha isn't a loner, and even Bethany seems to have grown into someone capable of caring for others. And finally, just to make sure this never happens again, the four friends take the video game into an alley and smash it into a million pieces. Please like and subscribe to help the channel out.